Pre-game show. What have I got? Got this right here. This is these two things here. All right. Got this is something that I have not played in quite some time, which is there we go. Metal Gear Online, which I wrote, as I've mentioned on this stream, maybe a year or so ago. I wrote extensively about Metal Gear Online for PlayStation Magazine, and I think I've got screenshots of my final stats on both the Japanese and the US servers, or the North American servers rather. And man, I easily put in probably about 500 to 600 hours cumulatively on those, doing research for the game and also just playing it, such that I can actually still hear the one or two, basically the 4 different death sound effects for male character A. You know, that sort of that sort of thing. I can still hear it in my head if I even just think about the game. So the fan servers are up. I'm looking forward to giving this a shot, and it'd be cool to play with some folks on stream with this too. Other than that, let's see. I watched this, which is amazing. This is, let me see if I can open this up so you can actually see it through the frosting of the thing. Right there, which is DOLLS by Kitano Takeshi. Beat Takeshi. And this does some amazing things. This is an amazing feat of storytelling. It's, I think, considered one of his artsier films because it more overtly uses symbolism and sort of like maybe storytelling that's not meant to be taken literally or concretely. And something I want to look at with this is how it uses this very special way of linking 3 interweaving stories together to sort of communicate something that I think Kitano has in mind with this movie, because I've seen this quote or variations of it pop up several different times. And the quote is sort of an attitude that he has toward death, which is, let's see, the reason why modern Japanese and Westerners loathe the notion of death is beyond me. There really is no reason to loathe death. And that's very interesting to me. That's, I mean, there is a piece with that, right? That's it's very nice, but also I think very hard to emulate, and even to a degree hard to sympathize with if you have many attachments to this world. And so I think a kind of an illustration of what happens there, of what that thought is, might be found in this movie. So just a quick overview, or rather description, of how the storytelling works. There are 3 separate stories of lovers whose love will doom them, essentially. They are not related to each other. There is one story that is kind of core and that weaves between the two, but only incidentally the characters pass each other on the road, and that's it. So Kitano mentioned that he didn't want to make this an anthology. He wanted to make it a single thing with interweaving stories. So the one that I want to look at is, of course, the Yakuza crime boss story, which is his deal is that before he got into the gang, he had a girlfriend who they would meet every Saturday at a park bench. She would bring him lunch, and that was kind of their thing, and they had a very close relationship. Here he is at the end of his career as a mobster. He's risen in the ranks, and is now looking back on his life and feeling a pang of regret for happiness that he forwent for the sake of ambition. And so from this vantage point of regret, we see some flashbacks showing that he recently has been somewhat treacherous. He has, maybe in a bid to allocate power, assassinated his Kyodai. He's gone after his sworn brothers, and has basically, there is no bond that he will not break for the sake of ambition. And but there's also a sort of a sentimentality here. This is his Kyodai's brother's son in the wheelchair, whom he will give money to, and you know, the guy in the wheelchair is like, I don't know where my dad is, but can you help me out? And you know, it's sort of implied that he feels some sense of responsibility toward the guy because he needs caretaking, and he killed his dad, so he's there to provide that support as needed. So, as it turns out, the woman whom he had loved when he was younger still shows up at the park bench. She still brings the lunch every other Saturday. She's kind of a local legend, and he shows up and steps right into his old role without telling her who he is. And he is equally as charming with her as he was when he was younger. So basically, all the reasons why she fell in love with him as a young man are the reasons why she falls in love with him as an old man, thinking he is somebody else. Now, because it is, of course, a crime movie, or not a crime movie, because it is a crime subplot, and we have seen that he has acted treacherously, excuse me, a reckoning is coming. So later in his story, this fella kind of sits and conspicuously breaks the space midway between the park bench and the edge of the screen. And as he leaves, he's going back toward his car with his bodyguards. The guy follows him, pulls out a gun, and shoots him. Again, we're not brought into any of the politics surrounding this. The only thing that we know is the broadish stroke that this old guy was acting treacherously, and that he has given many people pretty good reason to to kill him. In fact, this guy here could well be a son of one of the other sworn brothers that he killed. But the way, and this is where it gets to Kitano's quotation on death, because the way that the film represents this is you don't hear a gunshot, you don't see any bodies, it just cuts straight to this shallow running stream, and a red leaf falls and hits the water and is carried away on the current. This is a link between the different threads because this red leaf belongs to one of the other two narratives. So what he does is he takes this story with the Yakuza boss, it reaches a terminal point, but rather than end there, it dives immediately into another story. And it uses this image of a river, of a flowing on and a moving forward that's sort of an inevitable moving forward, and it's very natural. And this is a very beautiful image for this red leaf to represent his death in somebody else's story. Shows a sort of intertwining, a sort of merging of time, lives, and narrative, and that death can be taken as such. Which is not to say that this merging is without its own tragedy, because we see later the son of the brother whom he killed, who he given money to, still comes back and knocks on the door, asks for the boss to come out, and he doesn't, of course, because he is dead, and we are left to assume that this man who needs support will no longer get it, and his fate is likely not good. And that is entirely the result of this gangster being swept away into all the other stories that are out there. And so I think that's very lovely, and I think that image, that set of images, and the sort of diving of that story into another one for its visual resolution is very good. Like, you don't even have to be told what that leaf means. Like, you just know it. And that's one of the things that makes this movie brilliant, is that it does have the artsy symbolism, but it does it in such a way that is very clear, and that it's very clear and evocative without being explicit. And that is a very hard thing to achieve, and I respect that a lot. One more thing about this film that I loved. So one of the other subplots is this guy was engaged to be married, and he broke off his engagement because he had an opportunity to marry the boss's daughter that was forced on him. Evening, Mexican Sting. Good to see you. I'm just wrapping up a discussion of dolls. So this guy, he broke off his natural heart engagement and went with the marriage that his parents were arranging for his boss so he could have a future. He finds out that his former fiancée was so racked with heartbreak that she overdosed on medication, survived the suicide attempt, but is essentially in a vegetative state. And he actually leaves the wedding and goes to find her at the hospital, and whisks her away and takes care of her, even though he has no job and no means, and they are basically homeless and wandering. And this is, I mean, there's a combination of penance and also following through on a marriage in fact with that, because they are bound together literally. It turns out. And there's this one part at the very end where it resolves. It doesn't resolve, but it sort of brings their story to its climax and close. And this actress does one of the. This is an amazing piece of acting, and it is definitely helped by the fact that Kitano likes to linger on moments and faces. Here she is. They are outside they're outside the building where he proposed to her. She's holding up the object that he used in place of a ring because he was too poor for one, and she's just holding it here for like 5 to 10 seconds, and then out of nowhere, just this pure joy just floods her face, and it is irrepressible, and it's the sort of thing like she clearly can't deny expressing this feeling. And then after that, the memory of her heartbreak kicks in instantly, and she goes from that to just sorrow. And this is one of the most effective moments of highly emotive acting that I can have encountered in recent memory. It's beautiful. It's very well done. And he, of course, is this is the moment where he actually starts to show emotion. And when she remembers, he can remember too, in a way. So yeah, that's Dolls. Highly recommend it. Nothing that I've said, anything that I've said that describes this movie in detail, none of that actually gives away the experience of it. So I recommend jumping into it as you can. But with that, Monkey Island 2. Oh. There we go. Yeah, man, I recommend it. It is amazing. I watched it through once, and I think I rewatched the parts that struck me the most about 3 or 4 times in isolation after that. It's stunning, and I really love Kitano's sort of more reflective works.